Dear Sir, the planet Venus is inhabited with beings who look just like ourselves. No doubt you can't see this, not with all the education you may possess, for when one's educated, things become complicated, and that simplicity is non-existable. Dear Sir, re the quiet sun. I think the sun acts very strangely. I see it go into a red-hot disk, then change into a new moon, as on Saturday last. It rocked about, went dim and bright, and repeated this until after a few minutes it vanished. Dear Sir, on the basis of my theory of cold light radiation from the moon, there should be a period of turbulence, cloud chilling and rain about the 14th, 15th and 16th of June. Will you please help me to check this? Dear Sir, one evening, many years ago in Glasgow, I noticed a series of round balls travelling round 3 walls of a room. Whatever was causing the images, about 3 or 4 inches in diameter, I looked and could discover nothing. Then I noticed that stars in the sky were fading, and that as they faded, my balls disappeared. Stars were round. How is it that everyone thinks them pointed? Well, those are some of the many thousands of letters that I've had since I started going on the air and talking about astronomy, which is a good many years ago now. And at least these letters were written by people of independent thought, people who weren't shackled by the strings of convention. I believe, you know, that we're all nowadays too conventional and too regimented. We believe what we're told and we do as we are told. What I want to do in this programme is to examine the ideas and the views of some people who aren't shackled in this way, who are quite prepared to go out on a limb and think for themselves. Now, whether they're right or whether they're wrong is neither here nor there. I may fundamentally disagree with quite a lot of what we're going to hear. This doesn't matter. This is merely a question of personal opinion. Let's take an example. One of these independent thinkers is the Reverend P.H. Francis, Vicar of Stoughton in Sussex, and let it be said at once that he's no amateur. He holds an excellent mathematics degree from Cambridge University. He's taught mathematics for many years, and he still does. One of his theories is that the Earth is not kept warm by heat from the sun. Well, this is a wonderful part of Sussex, particularly in the sunshine, and I can feel the heat of the sun on my neck now, but of course you don't think the sun's hot.
No, the sun isn't hot. It's not a hot body. It causes heat, but it's not hot itself.
But the sun itself is cold?
Well, cold or temperate, like the Earth.
Well, how does it induce heat in the Earth, then? This is what I can't quite get into my mind.
The energy, there's an energy circle as there's a water cycle, and the sun operates that, and energy changes in a complete circle like that. Sometimes it has heat and so on. Now you feel a tree or a bit of wood, a table or anything like that, it's not hot, but you can release that energy it's taken in, and the same amount of energy is released when it's burnt or when it decays as it took in from its surroundings.
What puzzles me a bit is that at the moment I'm sitting here, say, in this lovely old vicarage, and I can see the sun, and I can feel what I think is heat on my forehead. It's coming from the sun.
Well, now, suppose you had an electric generating station. It doesn't have to be on fire,
yes,
but you can have an electric radiator and the generating station, which is completely cold, may be causing heat on your neck. So it doesn't mean that the generating station itself has got to be on fire. The idea that there are flaming bodies dashing all round about the place is complete nonsense. It's everybody assumes it because everybody else didn't know. Everybody's afraid to be different from everybody else.
I'm sure that Mr. Francis is right when he says that we tend to accept what we're told. And I wonder if everything now is so stereotyped and conventional that independent thought is stifled early on. And if so, does school play a part in the stifling? I decided to ask the boys of Homewood House, near Tunbridge Wells, whether they accepted everything that their masters told them, or whether they were ready to strike out along an independent line.
Right round here. Right. Oh, come on. Yes, I see what you mean. Yes. Well, a good deal of snow around, certainly. I've got some down my neck. Why? Yes, thanks to you very much. Ha ha. Look, yes. Why does snow fall down?
It's freezing.
It's water freezing.
And it's too heavy to be held up by the atmosphere, so it falls down.
Why does it fall down? This is the point. Gravity, yes. Now, what's gravity? Do you know?
Newton discovered.
Yes, now one at a time. What do you think gravity is?
Well, it is, as it says, a push or a pull, which makes things fall towards the earth.
This is what you've been told, isn't it?
Yes.
Have you ever tried to prove it? What about you? Yes.
You throw a
Yes.
stone up in the air and it comes down
I
and
know
it
it
doesn't
does.
keep going.
What would you say, for example, of someone who said that the universe ended in a blank wall? Would you think this was reasonable?
That's illogical.
That is what's on the other side.
Come on, you haven't had to say it yet. What do you think about it all?
Well, if it does end at the wall, what's on the other side of the wall? There can't be just nothing. There's got to be something.
If on the other hand, if on the other hand the universe doesn't end, then it's got to go on forever, hasn't it? Well, can you imagine that?
No.
Of course you can't.
It's like a road, never ending and never beginning.
Do you ever question this? I mean, do you ever think that everything that we are taught, I'm not talking about religion at the moment, everything that we are taught about science particularly, just could be wrong, and there may be some frightful flaw that nobody's thought about? Has that ever occurred to you? Something really fundamental. I mean, either mathematics or science itself, or anything you like. What would you say then? Any idea
But
what
the molecule structure
Yes,
might be
here we are.
wrong.
The molecule structure might be wrong.
I mean, the molecules that we know are based on carbon.
Ah, now, who's told you this?
Our science master.
And you just accept it?
Naturally, because I can't think of anything else that it could be made up of.
I see. Well, that's a jolly good reason.
It could be some unheard of thing.
Very fair. They think for themselves, but perhaps only within certain limits. We must accept some things, I know that, but there's a danger that we're going to turn into regimented sheep if we accept too much. Or have we already done it?
Now, look at this postbox. Nowadays, we're told that if we want a letter delivered in a reasonable time, we've got to put 5p on it, not 4p. And everybody meekly does it, so the price stays at 5p. Whereas if people protested and only put 4p on, the price would bound to come down. Nobody but a sheep would post a letter under such conditions. Closed. It would be, of course, because the bank's only open when everyone's at work and can't get there. And it doesn't occur to them to stagger their hours at all. What one does, they all do, which makes things extremely awkward. Yes, and there's another thing too, you know. What about this question of coinage? I've got in my hand here a 2-shilling piece, a 6p and a threepenny bit, and I know exactly what they are and what they mean. But in a year or two's time, we're all going to go over to this extraordinary decimal coinage idea, and nobody will understand it. But because we are told to do it, we're going to do it. And then consider bus timetables. In very many cases, independent operators could run services very much more cheaply and very much more efficiently than the official ones, and yet they are not allowed to do so. And so we just go on waiting very meekly for our buses, and sometimes we wait for hours. You see what I mean by that? Driving on the wrong side of the road, most dangerous. And they're going to try and make us do it in a few years, simply and merely because the rest of Europe does, and I don't like to think what the results are going to be. And I very much fear that I'm one of these sheep already. I've become ultra-conventional. I believe that the Earth is a planet, a globe nearly 8,000 miles across going around the Sun. I believe that the Moon is another globe going around the Earth, that the Sun is a star, and that the other stars are themselves suns. And I base this upon what I hope is reasonable interpretation of the facts as I've been told them, and the things that I've seen through this telescope. And of course, in astronomy, there's a great deal we don't know. But we're learning more every year, in fact, every month. For example, we have now the idea of going out into space with projects such as Apollo.
20 seconds out, we get a loud and clear from Frank Borman. All looks great.
As the astronauts went moonward, they could see the Earth. And to most people, this new view confirmed that the world is a globe, but not to everyone. And while in Apollo 8, the commander, Colonel Borman, mentioned the views of Mr. Samuel Shenton, president of the International Flat Earth Society, who lives in Dover and who believes the Earth is shaped like a gramophone record, with the North Pole in the middle and a wall of ice all round the edge.
Links very much with the statement which was given out by General Boardman, the astronaut. He spoke about the Earth in its early stages. The Earth in its early stages was revealed from the waters, and it was revealed as a four-square fabric.
Like this, in fact?
Absolutely like that.
And this is water around it?
Absolutely, yes, yes. The waters were dispelled from the Earth, and the whole thing was covered by a heaved-up structure, shamihim in the Hebrew, a heaved-up structure actually in water.
What about the astronauts then? If they didn't in fact go round the Earth, what did they go round?
Their track goes across the Earth's surface,
Yes,
so much so that...
here. The North Pole in the middle and the South Pole all round.
Yes. The astronauts fired off from Cape Canaveral, or Kennedy as it is today. They went on an egg-shaped orbit over this like that.
Keeping the same height all the time.
Absolutely so. Dr. Littleton said that to put a thing into orbit, you carry it up to a height and then level off.
What exactly is this line here?
Oh, those result from the camera photographing here the horizon, and the photographs result in these humped effects, which people are presented with, that they think the Earth is round.
In fact, there isn't any South Pole.
No. The 60,000 miles was round the ice barrier, and so far man has not gone across the ice barrier to investigate any further.
There's one theory I can think of which was completely wrong, but which nevertheless led to some rather interesting research. And that was the idea that the Earth is the inside of a hollow sphere, so that Australia's above our heads somewhere, the sun's in the middle, surrounded by a crystal sphere upon which the stars are etched, and the Earth extends below our feet infinitely in all directions and rises up like this, so to speak. Well, it's a fascinating idea, and in the early 1930s it percolated through to Germany, and the City Council of Magdeburg offered to finance a rocket to be sent up vertically to see whether in fact it would crash land in Australia. They took this idea to the German rocket experimenters, people like Werner von Braun, and they did in fact finance and launch 2 rockets to test the theory. In fact, the first rocket rose to about 10 feet and then exploded. On the second occasion, the rocket launching was horizontal instead of vertical, so the entire thing was inconclusive. Certainly, von Braun and his workers had no faith whatever in hollow globes, but all the same, these independent thinkers did finance some research which, at the time, was jolly useful. Flat Earths, hollow Earths. In either case, the Earth would be the most important body in the universe. That was the ancient idea, and it isn't dead yet. It also survives in astrology. To the astrologer, the destinies of men are affected by the positions of the planets in the sky, and this implies, as the ancients did, that the Earth is all-important, and that everything else is there for our convenience. It's an attractive idea, and this may be while it still has a large following. I talked about it to Mrs. Parker, who is Secretary to the Faculty of Astrological Studies. Well, a little while ago, I consulted the daily papers and looked at my horoscope for the week or so, and when you compared the two, they were entirely different.
Oh, of course, this has absolutely nothing to do with the sort of astrology that I'm concerned with at all. That's just fun, pop astrology, if you like. And heaven forbid that one should be associated with that. Of course, one can't possibly divide the world into just 12 neat little sections like that. I mean, this is ridiculous.
One thing that always interests me, you say, and I don't dispute you, that astrology actually works. Why? Why should the positions of the planets have any effect upon human destinies at all?
Well, of course, this is a $64,000 question. And I must be the first to admit, and I'm sure every logical, every sensible astrologer would say the same, that we do not know. It could be because of the solar system being such a compact unit of space that we are interdependent on each other. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows.
Would you say that your life is really ruled by the stars?
Oh, not at all, no. I look upon astrology as a perfectly practical subject. Rather like a captain of a ship using a weather forecast, if one wants to use it, with regard to the future.
And you think that astrology really can have a beneficial effect upon people?
Oh, absolutely, because through astrology one can learn much more about oneself.
What do you think is the future of astrology?
Oh, definitely with the psychiatrists and the psychologists. This is where our future lies. I'm afraid, as far as with the astronomers are concerned, we've parted and never the twain shall meet.
One trouble about the independent thinker is that he finds it very difficult indeed to prove himself right. But equally certainly, it's very difficult to prove him wrong. And if you think about it, you know, you can't prove a negative. For example, I can't prove to you that the sun's going to rise in the east tomorrow morning. I think it is, because all the evidence I have indicates that way, but I can't absolutely prove it. And this is the way all the way through. And history, too, is studied with people who were in some cases right and in others wrong. Consider the people who first maintained that the Earth goes round the sun instead of the other way round. People like Aristarchus in Greek times and Copernicus in the 16th century. They were regarded as quite definitely eccentric. And in the early part of the 17th century, there was a tremendous storm about it, and it even led to a trial in Rome in which Galileo, the great scientist, was accused of impiety. And then coming on to more modern times, what about Sir William Herschel, probably the greatest observational astronomer who's ever lived, and who only died in 1822, but who nevertheless believed that there were people living inside the sun? And then there was Simon Newcomb, a man who did tremendous work in astronomy, and who proved, to his own satisfaction, that the aeroplane would never fly. In fact, he said that the only practicable form of flying machine was something pulled by a large crop of little birds. Then we had Professor Lowell, great American astronomer, whose mathematical researches led to the discovery of the new planet Pluto. But he believed that there were canals on the planet Mars, and that Mars was the seat of a brilliantly intelligent race who had covered the entire world with a kind of irrigation system. History is studied with people like this. They can't prove they're right. Equally certainly, it's difficult to prove that they're wrong. What the independent thinker has to do is to start absolutely from scratch, look out into the universe, take what he sees there, and then put his own independent opinion on it without bothering about anybody else. And this is exactly what has been done by Mr. John Bradbury of Ashton-under-Lyne, who's thrown all orthodoxy out of the window and has constructed a picture of the universe that is all his own, based partly upon theory and partly upon observations made with his strictly unorthodox telescope. But Mr. Bradbury, this looks like a conventional telescope, but I gather it isn't.
No, it's far from being a conventional telescope because it isn't split up in the lenses. Most of the lenses in this telescope are at the eye end.
Down here,
the
you mean?
eyepiece end, yes. Yes, there's only one object lens at the other end.
What's the purpose of having so many lenses?
Well, you can't get the power without. You must have the power to bring the object very much closer. With a conventional telescope, you can't do that.
I would have thought that every time you passed a beam of light through an extra lens, you'd lose a bit of light.
Yes, that is so. You do lose light. But looking at objects in the sky, you don't need to lose it.
Looking at your map of the Earth, it looks to me as if you've got the North Pole in the middle and all directions are south. Is this correct?
Yes, it is correct in that method.
What about gravity?
Sir Isaac Newton, when he was in an orchard in Lincolnshire, saw an apple fall from the tree, and he brought out his theory of gravity, that the gravity had drawn this apple to the ground. Yet he didn't make a law which held the other apples on. Now, he also said that if you could stand a needle up on its point without any support, he would believe that the world wasn't going round. Naturally, I had to bring out a new theory to prove the shape of the world, the shape of the Earth too, you see.
Which is what you've done.
Yes, that is it. And you see, no matter where we are on the Earth's surface, we will always be pulled back to the centre.
And that's why you can't go to the edge of the Earth, in fact.
Yes, you cannot go to the edge of the Earth.
Well, let's have a look at the actual diagram of the Earth itself, shall we? And this, I think, is very interesting. Here we are. Now, I know that you've got the Earth as with a flat top and kind of a round underneath. Is this correct?
Yes, that is quite so. Yes, you see, this is more like a jigsaw puzzle. You can't complete it without a flat-topped Earth.
So this is the entire universe, in fact?
Yes, you see, you've got the full metallic stony background, and this, of course, was where the flow of magnetism is.
What's this line down here?
Now, this line is for the sub-semi-vacuum. It divides the pure vacuum from the semi-vacuum which surrounds the Earth itself.
What about the sun and moon?
The moon?
It's a flat disk,
Yes,
isn't it?
not actually flat. It is slightly convex, but not much on the surface. Now, it is a disk of carbon.
The moon's made of carbon,
Just
in fact.
carbon,
Yes.
just a carbon disk, which shows in this.
Yes.
This I saw 2 years ago on the harvest moon, September moon. And this material here is plasticine phosphorus, or a material very, very similar to that.
But where does that come from? Where does the plasticine phosphorus actually picked up?
It's circulating in the atmosphere. When the moon's waning, it allows it to go off, and when it's waxing, it picks it up again. Now, this illustration here is more of the moon itself, with a finger-like projection coming over the top. This happened in 1953, and the finger-like projection stayed on for 3 days.
There was only one there, was there?
There was only one, yes, definitely one. I built another telescope, and I used an astronomer's telescope too, to prove whether I was right or not, but I couldn't see it with the astronomer's telescope.
And was this due to the plasticine phosphorus spreading over the moon gradually?
Yes, but I think it picked a little more up than it should have done, you see. The surface of the moon, the thickness of the surface is around about 1 inch. This has been really worked out. Mathematically, it's really been worked out.
What incidentally about the sun? Do you think the sun is small also?
The sun would be, I should think, about twice the size of the moon, because it can, the moon can go in the front of the sun and cover the old sun up. And that is why the sun really is only twice the distance of the moon.
And of course, the sun presumably is very much hotter than the moon.
Yes, if we speak of hot as hot, but the sun actually is cold. It's very cold indeed, because we couldn't get a lot of heat. The sun wasn't cold, you see.
Can you define light quite shortly?
Yes, we can work onto this one.
I don't quite understand this caption down here, that all red light is green.
Well, we always knew that infrared light itself was red, but it isn't. It's actually green. We can easily prove that by plugging in electric fire. You get the green light first, and then you get the red light, which of course are interchangeable. Green being the only colour, really, it makes up all of the colours of light.
So all light is in fact green?
It is.
Including green itself?
Yes, including green itself, but not red.
You know, I think you're going to be the first to admit that these ideas and theories of yours are not conventional ones.
Correctly, yes.
Well, I know that you've also given lectures at various universities. I mean, I wasn't at your lecture at Cambridge University or at Keele, but I heard about the people who were. And how do you find that other people react to your ideas?
Well, some people, of course, when it's all explained thoroughly, they will accept it. But if it isn't explained thoroughly, well, of course, they think we're nutcases or something, you see.
And what do you think, what research are you going to carry out in the near future?
Well, of course, the next thing is photography.
Well, Mr. Bradbury hasn't yet started his photographic experiments, but when he does so, I am sure that the results will be truly remarkable. Let me concede that I don't pretend to agree with his theories, but I have the greatest admiration for him as a man who's had the moral courage to break clean away from every semblance of conventionality, strike out for himself, and lecture publicly about it with no fear of ridicule or scorn. To me, Mr. Bradbury is the supreme example of the independent thinker. And so to Warminster. Another example of a man who interprets the evidence as he sees it is Mr. Arthur Shuttleworth of the Warminster Journal. He's written 2 books about flying saucers. He believes that we are being visited by alien beings and that one focal point of saucer activity is Cradle Hill outside Warminster town.
Well, this is the first time I've been on Cradle Hill. It's certainly a very bleak kind of spot. Is this one of your most favourable observing sites?
This is the best we found, Patrick, of all the high points around here. This is the most productive visually of these craft.
Where do the saucers normally come from?
Well, normally they come from due north. One finds them hovering over that particular copse, which is quite renowned now, really, that particular copse, because so many people have seen them here, you know.
What would you say has been your most exciting experience up here?
Well, I would say that the most unusual, as apart from exciting, the most exciting was when one of these small spheroids chased us through the copse, virtually. And we tried in turn to chase it, and it just went along there at a terrific pace. This was no bigger than a soup plate. Must have been a robot eye or a brain beacon, like a thinking beacon, which is sent down from the craft to make observations. The most exciting, to me, or the most unusual, was when we had 4 rather nice people from all over the world. One was Lady Marjorie Stewart from Australia, who's travelled all the way across here. Had there been myself here, I would have run away and thought, I'm mad. You know? We saw one coming in from about the southwest towards the copse, and when it arrived there, it delicately balanced upward like that, shot away, and as it shot away, imagine a battery of searchlights from the ground beaming up into the air. Stark, vivid colour. Well, instead of that, it was as though the battery of searchlights was in the air, and it formed a perfect arch of beautiful silvery light, absolutely brilliant. We've seen northern lights from here on a distant horizon, fan-shaped, you know, bluey-white. But this was directly above us here, and it was vast, this terrific screen of light. How the military missed it, I don't know. We had no reports. But 4 of us saw these, and we all confirmed on tape, separately later, exactly what we'd seen, and it all concurred and confirmed one another, corroborated what we were seeing. In the midst of this, there suddenly appeared what I can only describe as 2 giant forms, aeroforms. Here again, this is where the great shock to me came, why it's the most unusual. And these forms were absolute silhouettes of figures. Long hair as though waving in the wind. No features visible, but the outline was there. The fingers, the robes coming down, everything outlined. One over that particular stretch of trees, one over that copse there. But here was the apex of this glorious battery, you see, of light. Very much like light prismatic or coloured window lights of a church beating down on a beautiful fluted organ pipe chamber. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There was that effect, and then these two beautiful figures. And of course, the figures had no character about them. They were so huge, and it was as though they were trying to embrace us. Little group of four. One woman fell on her hands and knees, and she honestly thought this was the second coming.
I'm not surprised.
You know?
Yes, I'm not surprised. Yes.
So that this is what I mean by my certainty that there's such a very thin barrier between things spiritual, things scientific. Providing one isn't pseudo either,
Yes.
one can get at some strata of truth, I think.
Well, it's a lovely evening at the moment. I can see the moon shining at us from up there, so we'll come
Yes.
back here this evening and
Well,
just hope for the best.
I hope so, yes. Of course, it's not as large as the normal type we get, but that we would definitely classify as UFO. You can hear, when a plane goes over, you'd hear the sound legacy. There's nothing there so far, and there should be. Because that's not at high altitude either. You will, but he'll come back, Patrick. He'll hover over the cots, probably. He'll come back. Yes, he will. He will come back.
I think, with a great respect, I think he was a satellite.
Well,
it's probably Echo. Probably Echo. I thought
That's two satellites in 2 minutes.
Yes,
then.
yes, we can see hundreds of them.
Yeah. Oh yes, but
I
that
bought
was
some
a
with-
very
bought some with
low.
binoculars.
I thought that was very, very low.
I
for a
got some with
satellite.
binoculars.
Yeah.
Thanks awfully. May I retain for 1 second? Mr. Ferguson? Thanks awfully.
I would say that's exceptionally low for a satellite. And it isn't as large as what we normally see, but that's that type.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's another one coming up, you see, to the copse, you see? There you are. Another one coming up right to the copse, I think, isn't it? Unless it's my eyes that are bad here, but it looks as though that's moving towards the copse.
Right.
That's another one,
Once you
anyway.
turn the lights on, of course, we're
The
defeated.
other one is blacked out, but I think that that's another one going towards the copse. Very, very low. Very, very low. Here, look. Right over the track, right over the copse, heading for the copse now. Now that's peculiar if that's a plane, because you should hear a plane definitely at that altitude from this angle. There you are, merging in with the first clump. You see? Now you don't get 3 satellites in 2 minutes, surely. It's miraculous if you do.
Well, it's been a most interesting evening, and whether one believes in flying saucers or whether one doesn't, it's certainly been original so far as I'm concerned. It's independent thought, and I think you'd call yourself an independent thinker.
Yes, first of all, I'm glad that you enjoyed your visit.
I have
And I
noticed
do,
it.
I do think of myself as that, I'm afraid, without being egotistical about it.
I don't think there's any reason to be ashamed of it. Very much the reverse. In fact, I think it's probably done something for you, hasn't it?
It has. I think it's broadened my personal vision of man, you know, and mankind, the art and purpose of life, what it's meant for, perhaps even what lies beyond, you know.
Well, I've always maintained for a long time that we're all too standardised and reactionary. And do you think this independence of thought in all directions is going to spread?
I think so. Possibly due to the manifestations of these craft.
And where do you think, where's it all going to lead us?
I think it will lead eventually, and I do hope this most sincerely, to man on Earth becoming a truly civilised creature. And I use creature in the nicest sense.
Well, whatever one thinks, no one's going to quarrel with that, and let's only hope it comes true.
I hope so.
It's a lovely night. Beautiful night. Look over there, Saturn setting the big.
Now man may land, if he is able, upon the moon.
The voice of Venus, according to Mr. George King, president of the Aetherius Society. Mr. King now lives in California and is, he explains, in constant telepathic touch with Aetherius, a powerful extraterrestrial being who lives on Venus and is always on hand with help and counsel. The Aetherius Society has its headquarters in the Fulham Road. When I went there, I was greeted by Mr. Robertson, who very kindly acted as the Society's spokesman on this occasion. This, I assume, is where you hold your meetings,
Yes, yes, that's right. This, incidentally, is a model of a typical flying saucer that's very often seen in the skies of this Earth. It was actually taken from 2 photographs taken many years ago, one by a man named George Adamski in America.
Yes, I remember him.
And later by a boy called Stephen Derbyshire in the north of this country. Both photographs turned out to be images of the identical craft, and this model was made as a result of that.
What about the name Aetherius itself?
The word, or the name Aetherius, is a Greek pseudonym meaning the one who comes from space. It is a pseudonym given to a particular master from the planet Venus who regularly communicates to the Aetherius Society.
So, in fact, Aetherius lives upon Venus?
Lives upon the planet Venus, yes.
You wouldn't then agree with the astronomers that Venus is a world where the temperature is too high for life to exist?
I would say that it is possibly uninhabitable for life as we know it, for the particular carbon-based cell body that man on this Earth has.
What about the Interplanetary Parliament that I see mentioned so much in your publications?
This is an organization set up on the planet Saturn, which is the most advanced planet in the solar system, and there representatives from all over the solar system, except this Earth, of course, meet and discuss policy and direct all activity within the solar system.
Why should the Earth be excluded, then?
Well, why indeed? Mankind has evolved so far that he has got to get himself out of the materialistic trap and the mess that he's built for himself over the past centuries.
I read in one of your publications that, in your view, the Earth people are descended from Lucifer, who destroyed the Earth with an H-bomb. Is this correct?
Mankind on this Earth, many thousands of years ago, did inhabit a planet that orbited between Mars and Jupiter. Through his deviation into the realms of material science, he blew that planet up. Today, you can see that as the asteroid belt.
I read one of your statements some time ago, a good many years ago now, I think it was, that the Earth had been attacked by fishmen from across the galaxy who sent a flying saucer towards us with the idea of destroying us, and that the Martians blew it to pieces on the way. Is this correct?
This is correct. Quite a time ago now, there was a planet in a solar system, the other end of the galaxy to what we are, did have an interest in landing on this planet, notably because most of its surface is water, which they required. They were running out of it apparently on their own planet. The Martians stopped this attack long before it ever reached the Earth.
What does Aetherius himself look like?
No description has been given of Aetherius, but a typical Venusian, if landing in a particular aspect on this Earth, would be in the region of maybe 7 to 9 feet tall, long white or fair hair, a cinnamon-coloured skin. Particularly noticeable would be the lack of any pupil to the eye. Their eyes do not work on a refractory principle like ours. And another curious feature would be that their feet would appear abnormally small to carry such an enormous structure.
What then about the Saturnians? What do they look like?
A Saturnian, by that time in evolution, one has gained such a status that you appear, as all men will one day appear, in his entirety. That is, an ovoid shape, like a large incandescent egg, maybe 40 feet tall.
He may erect buildings upon the moon in order to live there. He is almost given a free hand.
The Master Aetherius is able to talk to us in the English language, but can we speak Venusian? What does that mean, actually?
That means, how are all you? I am very pleased to see you this afternoon.
How many languages can you speak?
I can speak altogether 3 of the space languages. One is Venusian, the second is Kruger, the planet Kruger 60b, and Pluto.
What about Plutonian? What does that sound like?
Plutonian is
How did you learn these languages?
These languages have been a gift sent from me from the actual people by rays. And even at this moment, although you cannot see them, they are sending these rays down to help me.
By some mental process or some mechanical process?
No, it's by some mechanical process. But apart from this, I can't tell you how it's done.
What about Martian?
Martian, I don't know much about their language. Although I've heard so much about them, I've never been in contact with them.
You haven't actually been to any other planets yourself?
No, not yet.
Who drew that picture, did you?
No, a lady done this for me, of the name of Mrs. Gill.
And where do these people actually come from?
They come from the second planet from the Sun Kruger, 60b.
So in addition to speaking these languages, I believe you can also write them. This is correct,
Yes,
isn't it?
I can write these languages.
Could we see an example of their writing, do you think?
Yes, certainly.
What does that mean, actually?
This here means that we are here for a purpose, which is something to do with your Earth. That we will reveal later.
I see. Could we see some Plutonian writing, do you think?
Certainly.
What does that mean, actually?
This means, now they have written this here, a message to you. Before long, in 1969, we are going to show you proof. Patrick, they call you. Did you mind this here?
Not at all, no,
Patrick.
far from it, no.
We have we have watched you for a long time. We are interested in all your great men besides ordinary people. We are interested in everyone.
That's most encouraging, because Venus... Mr. Bernard Byron from Essex moves in a realm of the unknown which, I think you'll agree, makes it very difficult for us to disprove him. And yet he has the charm, the cheerfulness and the courage which is common to all independent thinkers, and for which I myself have the warmest admiration. But summing up as a whole, what are we going to make of this whole theme of independent thought? Well, first of all, our independent thinker's got to be rather a special kind of person because he's got to be absolutely free from any conventionality. If he isn't, then he's going to be shackled from the outset and he'll never go out on a limb and make possible progress. Secondly, his researches have got to be potentially beneficial, and this I think is very important, and it does apply certainly to everyone we've been talking to. And thirdly, in some cases anyway, there's a kind of, well, not exactly a metaphysical trend, that wouldn't be the right word, but at least a groping for something we don't really understand. And who knows, our independent thinkers may in fact get hold of it. Sometimes they're right, very often they're wrong. But again, this again, surely, is very much a matter of personal opinion. And so, hemmed in with restrictions, hidebound and sheep-like, we go on our way. We hear the independent thinkers, but do we give them any credence? In most cases, no. Just as only 30 years ago, the men who prophesied space travel and flights to the moon were dismissed as unworthy of comment. It's too easy to dismiss an idea because of its unconventionality. But is it safe? I'm not going to break free myself, you know. I'm never going to believe in the cold sun or the flat earth or flying saucers or astrology, but I do realize how much poorer the world would be without these people of independent thought. But as for myself, I'm going to remain a cozy little conventionalist for the rest of my life, and I know it. But I may well be missing something. I wonder.